All right, so you want to make sure that you have a variety of brush sizes now. So I've got a mid-size brush, I've got a thin brush, and I even need more of a detail brush, so I'm going to look for those brushes in the middle of the table and make sure that I've got a variety of detailed brushes. Thanks for doing that transition silently. Appreciate you. Okay. Now, the first thing you want to do is you want to get your value scale painted in. We're going to stick with the grays in these 3 boxes because we know that we can get pure black and pure white out of the bottle. So I'm going to start with my darkest value that was kind of up here. I'm going to place that in this box. If it looks scratchy, you can add a little bit of water to it. You don't want it to be see-through like watercolor, but it'll bring some life back into it. I'm going to do a mid-tone gray here. Don't worry about painting inside the boxes on this one. You're fine. You want to start over? Okay. And then I'm also going to do a light gray. So I've got my 3 basic values filled in addition to white and black. Next step is going to be to look at the photo. Okay, and I'm going to start mapping out where I see those values. Now, the only difference between your celebrity drawing where you have it now and where this drawing is at is that I've started to outline some of the values. Do you guys see that? Okay, so I'm starting in the same way that we started with our personal still life drawings. We're going to get large areas of value filled in first, and then we'll do small changes within a single form like a lip or an eye or a nose after we get basic values down. I would not paint over the top of everything with really thick paint. I would be pretty careful about getting stuff filled in to make sure that we don't have to start over. I'm going to start with a slightly larger brush. I'm getting my dark value. On Kobe's face, I'm seeing those dark values are around the outside edges. So I'm going to go ahead and start painting those in. If it looks scratchy, I need more paint. If you need to get more paint, that's in the middle of the table for you. I'm just doing large areas of value right now. I know that texture is going to change on his beard, but I'm just going to get that value in right now. Not worried about texture. Texture happens after we get small value changes going as well. Picking up more paint on my brush as it feels scratchy. Really practice on these outside edges. When you push down, you can get a bead of paint going along the outer edge of the brush, and that's going to help create a nice, clear, not shaky line on the outside edge. You are doing whatever is applicable for your picture. So all of them are a little bit different. For instance, Jun Cook's face is mostly light gray. So I focus in on the light gray values versus the darker values. You should go whichever way makes the most sense to you. If you like to work dark to light, start with the darks. If you don't care, I don't care. I'm not caking this paint on where it's like gloopy, but it definitely has enough that it's not see-through. If it's see-through, that's a problem. We got to work on that. Okay, the next thing I'm going to switch to is my medium gray tone. Going to mix up some more of that. Going to twist my bristles to make sure I've got enough to cover. Looking at my photo reference. Switching brushes as I need to. You might even find a brush that you're like, ooh, I just like the way that one feels. That might be the one you stick with. Starting to get those lighter values filled in. Not doing any kind of blending yet. Just getting large areas covered. So you'll see I'm still trying to paint inside the lines. I'm not like totally going YOLO on it. But I am overlapping enough that I'm not going to have anywhere that turns out paper colored at the end. And as you can see from this process, it looks a little crazy before it's going to start to look good again. We have to get all of the larger values in before we go in and start filling in smaller values and details that make it look like the person again. Okay, once I get a majority of this covered with a little tiny bit of water on my brush, I'm gonna go in and start working on getting those blends going. So first I'm filling in this smaller detail of his mouth. So I've got a little bit of water on my brush. I'm coming in and I'm working on following the contour. Okay, so with his forehead, I'm painting up and down, going over the paint that I already have there with a little bit of water on my brush. That's gonna help me to blend those things together. Once I get that general blend going across the face, now I can start to come in with more of a detailed brush to get smaller areas. When I move from blending large areas to blending small areas, we're gonna start to define things a little bit better, and it's gonna allow people to kind of see what we're seeing. So my first trick for this is to get a sharp point on a small brush. You wanna kind of twist it off to the side. And you can see that that's gonna give you like a really nice point. I just twisted my brush in the paint like this to create a point. And that's gonna allow me to use this like an eyeliner almost. It's gonna be a much more controlled, slower line. When I do that, I'm using my pinky as an anchor. So my hands shake. I'm gonna put my pinky down. That's gonna keep my hands steady. We don't want to leave anything paper colored, so like the whites of the eyes need to get painted. Going in and getting some detail painting on the gums. I'm going to go over the top of that with the upper lip. Make sure you're cleaning your brush really well before you're trying to use the white. Okay, now that I have overall area covered, now it's time to go in and start getting, like I said, more of the detailed areas. If my paint's getting dried up, add a little bit of water to that. It's going to help bring it back to life. All about how we layer things. So you'll notice that I went in, I did the gums, then I did the teeth, then I did the highlight on the lip, and I finished with the dark part of the lip last. Noticing that the texture of the beard is different, I'm doing what's called a stippling technique. It's where I pick up and set my brush down lots of different times. Got a couple of different colors on my brush. That's gonna help it look more realistic. He's also got upper lip hair. Using a thin black line to highlight some of the areas that need more detail on them. I'm gonna go back in and blend that out. Using a short choppy stroke for his eyebrows. Okay, when it comes to the lash line, that's going to be really important that your brush is on its very tippity tip. The eyes are what's going to make it or break it in a lot of these paintings, so making sure that we're extra careful. When we're adding in those details to the eyes. Kobe's got a lot of wrinkles around his eyes because he's a little bit older. So I'm going to go in and kind of exaggerate some of those with a dark gray on my brush. Redefining where his eyelid shape was at. Looking for some of those smaller value changes. So once I got large area covered, then that really gave me the opportunity to come in and start getting, with my detail brush, some of these smaller areas of value. Starting to look at some of the other areas where I can come in and add detail, like the ears. Working on getting those large value areas covered first. And then coming in with small value changes within a single form after that. Got to make sure we get a base layer down before we start adding on top of that. Otherwise, we have paper color behind it, and that's just going to sabotage the realism that this could have. Okay, my very last step is going to be to add the highlights. I'm going to make sure I have a clean brush because we know that white is kind of wimpy, gets overpowered by a lot of different things. It's really, really important that you add this little highlight in the eye. Otherwise, they end up looking like sleepy or not living. So adding that highlight and then going in and really emphasizing that highlight in a couple other locations as we see it. So this is just white on my brush. Wanted to add some white into the beard. That's a little too much, so then I'm just going to layer the black right on top of it. Give it a little bit more dimension. How I'm treating the beard is the same way you could think about the hair if you had the photo of Billie Eilish or Millie Bobby Brown. You would apply those same things from the beard onto the hair. So start with large values, then going in and filling in smaller values. Lastly, really looking at smaller detail areas and then finishing with those highlights. All right, good luck.